What's up guys, and welcome back to Elderwood Games. Thomas here, and this week we're talking about 40k again, and I wanted to just take a moment and kind of take a couple weeks and talk about my two main armies, Tau and Tyranids, and I plan to kind of talk through how I would collect them again. So I'm going to start this week with my first army, which was Tau, and then if you're looking forward to my talk on Tyranids, you can tune in next week for that as I talk through those. So for Tau, basically this was the army that I wanted to play in 40k, and I started out just buying a box of stealth suits. And that was my first kit that I put together and painted for 40k, just to kind of have an idea of whether or not I would enjoy the hobby as a whole. With that in mind, looking back on it now and how far I've come in the hobby, I just wanted to talk through how I would collect this army again, and what I know now, and how I would improve sort of my army collection over time before, and just talk about either the units specifically or more abstractly how I would handle them as a hobby and that sort of thing. So outside of just a few units that I had picked up in the beginning, the Battle Force boxes of that year had the Tau Battlesuit Battle Force box that came with a Riptide, a Ghost Kill, a Broadside, and a Commander. And I ended up getting 3 of those boxes just because they were the stuff that I wanted to build and the stuff I wanted to play. And so they were the kits that I got first. And while I really enjoy a lot of those units, and I play a lot with many of those units up to this day, I do think I should have started slower. And I think I should have either stayed with just like the stealth suits or with the crisis battle suits first, just to give a better idea of what I was getting into, but also be able to have smaller units to paint and be able to test out more versions. Obviously in previous videos I've talked about the importance of testing schemes and finding out what you like before you really devote your army to that paint scheme, because you will be painting that a lot over the course of time. And I think with Tau specifically, I could have gone in a unique direction of having potentially varied schemes based on sort of the battlefield roles of either the specific battle suits or other things. And I've kind of attempted with that and tested that a bit further with my most recent stealth suits, where they have the different camo types on them. And I like the idea of my stealth units having literal camouflage. And then I've also tested other colors with my Riptide, which my Riptide is blue, but it still has the accent green color. That's the same for my other ones because that's their set color. So I've actually looked at potentially with my next wave of models and units, painting those in that blue scheme instead to have them be a little bit different. My next note on me collecting the Tau again, obviously I would start with the smaller units. So I'd have my stealth suits, I'd have my crisis suits, and probably do my commanders for the crisis suits as well, to at least build up the beginning parts of my force. And then I would worry about the bigger stuff, Riptides, the Ghost Keels, eventually a Storm Surge, and especially Broadsides. I probably would have gotten more Broadsides because I love that unit. It's my favorite Tau battlesuit, so having more of those I think would have been a lot of fun. But I more specifically would have not bought kits that I didn't actually want. So I actually have a couple units of Fire Team and a Cadre Fireblade, which are like the grunts of the Tau Empire. And they're just not really my favorite. I only play them right now because they get me to 3,000 points. So if we want to play 3,000 points, I have to play with them. So that's the only time I play them though. And I'm not really excited to play them. I would much rather have, another couple of battle suits to replace those points and be able to play with those instead. But I just haven't grown my collection to that point yet. Part of the reason for that was because when I bought them, I was in the match play league a year or so ago. So I was needing points, and I kind of, in that time, I was under the impression that like they would be better at guarding my home or being able to do small like objectives and that sort of thing. But it was just because I wasn't playing my battle suits to their full capability. And now that I really know how to pilot those things a bit better, I don't really find a need for those units anymore. which is kind of sad. I don't really like having stuff that I'm not going to use, but had I realized and had I maybe slowed down with the hobby a bit more, I would have been able to instead pivot and do battle suits instead of the strike teams and that sort of thing. So a lesson learned for sure, but just follow kind of your heart and like what you enjoy, build towards that. Especially if you're more in casual circles like I am, build the stuff that you like, paint the stuff that you like, paint them how you like, and play with those on the tabletop, because that's where you're going to have the most fun. If you're more in the competitive scene, obviously you'll have to kind of pivot a little bit for meta reasons if you're wanting to top tournament tables, or just learn how to be an absolute boss at piloting your army to the point where your list doesn't matter because you know how to play it to the utmost extreme and be able to tank anyone else that comes at you on the tabletop. If I were to start Tau over again, I simply would just build towards the stuff that I like. I would have started smaller and I would have tested more paint schemes to find something that I think I would enjoy. I really like my brown and green, but I think it would have been cool had I thought about it earlier to have a varied scheme within my army and be able to have multiple different paint schemes going on that still felt cohesive with that green set color, but would give me some more creative freedom on kind of designing some of the suits in the future and that sort of thing. But those are my thoughts on how I would collect Tau again in the future. But let me know your thoughts down below, especially if you're a fellow Tau player, on what units and stuff you would do if you were to start everything over. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.